Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to concentrate mainly on two things. First of all, I'm going to remove all of the rivets that are holding the back plate of the lock to the frame that connects the back plate to the actual lid of the box. And once all the rivets are out, I'm going to be repairing any scrapes or gouges that resulted from getting rid of all of those rivet heads. First of all, I know there's going to be damage because there's no way that you can cut off a rivet head without having the chisel at least rub up against the plate that's holding the rivet or dig into it in some way. So there's going to be scratches and gouges, at the very least. And on top of that, there's going to be some extra damage because for me to be able to see what I'm doing, I have to be sitting where you're sitting. And of course, I'm not over there, the camera's there. So I'm really just guessing at where the chisel is while I'm doing all of this. So there's going to be some extra damage that wouldn't normally be there, but that's fine. I want to figure out how to clean up whatever happens during this process. And of course, as always, I'm going to be doing all of this without using any kind of tools that would make sense to anybody. I'm not going to be using any rotary tools or even needle files or sandpaper or anything like that. This is all going to be done with hand tools, chisels, and engravers, and stuff that I've made myself using recycled scrap. There's nothing fancy about any of this process. It's just my ongoing fascination with simple hand tools. So if you're new to this channel and you're getting ready to comment about all the things that I can be doing to make my life easier, please don't bother. I'm hardwired this way. I'm 61. I've been asking these questions, since I was maybe 4 or 5. So nothing's going to change. This is what I do. This is how I approach the work, when I have a choice about how I can do the work. So this is the way it is. And this is basically what this channel is all about. It's my platform to demonstrate all of these things and hopefully find other people that are interested in it as well. I should mention that the reason I'm chiseling off these rivet heads rather than drilling them out, which is more of the normal way of doing it, is because these are hand set rivets. Even if I wanted to drill them out, I really don't have any way of knowing exactly where the shaft of the rivet is because the head could be off to one side. So I have no way of knowing where to put my center punch mark, and if I just guess and drill into the plate, I'm going to be doing some damage that's going to be a lot harder to repair than just a couple of scratches on the surface. So even though it's a little more time consuming, the safest way to do this is to just pare away the rivet head and see where the shaft actually is, and then use a pin punch to drive that rivet out of the hole. Here you can see some damage that was done when I actually set the rivet. There's a row of hammer marks to the right of the rivet, and I think that's because the bolt guide on the left was interfering with my hammer, and it caused it to tip a little bit too much and create those marks. So I'm going to be getting rid of those as well, of course, while I'm cleaning up the whole plate. I'm not too sure what happened here. I am using the same chisel that I used to get rid of all the other rivet heads, but I'm getting some really deep scarring, and it seems to be coming from the transition where from the top of the bevel to the main body of the chisel. There's a sharp edge there, and it just happened to be catching on these rivets for some reason. So I think if I was designing a chisel to just cut away rivet heads, I wouldn't have a sharp angle there. I would have a rounded surface that would tend to burnish the plate more than cut these deep grooves in. These two rivets happen to be sitting right next to each other, and they both received the same amount of damage. So I'm going to clean up one and I'm going to leave the other one just so you can have a before and after kind of look at the repair that I did. Here's a close-up of that rivet. On the left of the rivet, you can see all the sharp grooves that were caused by that bevel. and the near side of the rivet has a steep slope. That's where the actual edge of the chisel dug in and started prying the head of the rivet off. On the other side of that peak, you can see the fractured grain from the rivet head, and those two little eyebrow shapes are actually the rivet head prying into the plate before it broke off from the bar. The chisel that I'm going to be using to clean up the area around the rivets is a flat chisel that I've modified slightly. I ground the bottom side of the chisel into a very, very slight radius, and that's to make sure that the center of the chisel cuts first, and there's absolutely no way that the outside edges of the chisel can dig into the plate and leave sharp lines or cuts that I have to deal with later. So I'm going to be using this chisel to rough in the area that I need to clean up. The first step in doing that is to dig down into the plate until I get to the bottom of all of these grooves. Once I have that level established, I can start making a gradual transition from the lower level to the top level of the plate. The aim here is not to produce a truly flat surface. All I'm after is a surface that appears flawless. It's just going to have a series of rolling hills that are going to drift between all the different levels in the plate, and it's going to appear flat because there aren't going to be any sharp-edged, high contrast areas that are just going to jump out at you. Of course, if you put a bright light that's going to rake across the surface of the plate, you'll see all the different levels. But generally speaking, when you're looking at it, you're going to concentrate on the lock mechanism. So as long as the back plate is just kind of a even texture, it's going to appear right. Here I'm a little bit further along. I have the two different layers established. I've removed all of the deep grooves, and now I'm just refining the transition between the top of the plate and the bottom of the recess that I needed to establish to carve out all of the grooves. And again, just to see how far I can push this process, I'm actually using the same chisel that I used to carve out the recess as a scraper to help refine that transition. So I'm actually using this chisel like a single tooth file. I'm just pushing it along and it's pulling up these very, very fine shavings. And you can also see where I've gone 90 degrees to the previous cuts to be able to level out the surface and to basically keep track of where I'm going, because every time you change the directions you're cutting through those lines and it's very, very clear where you're working. But already, first of all, you can't tell where the rivet is anymore because everything's been leveled out, and all of those deep scratches are starting to disappear. Here I've taken a wider shot so you can get a better feel for the size of the area that I'm working in. I've set up a wooden hand screw in the vise so that I can clamp the work horizontally and get some good light on it so I can see what I'm doing. Here's a close-up of the rivet from a slightly different angle, and you can see that I've gotten almost all of the gouges out except for a couple of really, really deep cuts. And you also get a better angle here for the shavings that are coming off in front of this chisel. This is the first time that I've tried doing this, and I'm actually very surprised at how well it's working. It's really hard to say whether it's slower than using a file. You would think it is because you're only working with one cutting edge, but the problem with a file is even if you have a curved file that can fit into the area, it tends to remove a lot of the material around where you're trying to reach. So with this type of approach, using a scraper, you can really pinpoint where you want to remove the material, and because you're looking at the cutting edge, you get a really good vantage point for what you're actually doing. So in my opinion right now, based on what I've done so far, files are obviously a big advantage if you're leveling a large surface and you're trying to get a very true and flat surface, because all the extra teeth cut the material away very quickly, and just the shape of the file is, gives you that type of a surface. But when it comes to fine detail work, getting into small areas, it's It's hard to say whether a scraper is better than a file. It's certainly something I'm going to pursue, and it's definitely worth a lot more research and, of course, building specific tools that are designed for this. I'm just using the chisel that I use to gouge out the basic recess. So if I had a proper scraper that was sharpened and well honed, I would imagine this process would even be more enjoyable. So here I have the results of an afternoon's work. I have the one hole finished. I've played around with the process of how I needed to get here. Now I'm going to do the same thing to all the other rivet holes, clean them all up and getting them to this stage. When I'm done assembling the entire lock, I'm going to go over the entire plate one more time and produce the same finish over the whole plate. So all of these spot repairs are just going to disappear once the entire plate is covered with the same texture. And of course, before I get to that stage, I'm going to be experimenting with different gravers and, edge profiles to see how I can get an even better finish. So when I do the final pass, everything is just going to look like a very nice satin finish on the entire surface. So I'm really satisfied with the results of this little experiment, and from here I'm going to be moving on to finishing the rest of the lock because I'm satisfied that I'm going to be able to repair anything that comes along and produce a very nice finish on the lock when I'm done. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can contact me by using the email address that I have shown here. If you like the channel and the work that I'm doing, please consider becoming a patron. Every dollar you contribute will bring me one step closer to being able to produce videos full-time.